Let's get a little lighthearted, friends. It is UFC 252. Daniel Cormier goes after Stipe Miocic's heavyweight championship. UFC 252 this Saturday, August 15th, live on ESPN's pay-per-view from the UFC Apex Center. We have a smaller octagon cage, 25 feet compared to the normal 30 feet. We also have Sean O'Malley taking on Marlon Vera, Junior Dos Santos versus Rosenstruck, and we even have a John Dodson appearance on this card. We'll go ahead and make our predictions in a little bit, but I want to talk about this main event and this co-main event really fast. First, we have Stipe versus DC. Arguably, this is for best heavyweight, greatest heavyweight, the GOATs of all time. The conversation really becomes resumes. If Stipe wins, I think it's hands down he's the GOAT in the heavyweight division. For DC, it's a little bit more arguable just because the resume isn't there. Not as many devastating names. And honestly, a lot of it comes from what he's done at light heavyweight. DC is a great heavyweight though. Hell, winning that Strikeforce tournament and becoming that champion. But the legacy thing is really interesting because while there's so much on the line for this fight, I don't think it's going to do that well. I don't think it's going to have a lot of buyouts, and I can't explain why. I think Stipe should be a beloved figure in this sport. He's a firefighter, for God's sake. Then you have DC, Olympian, All-American guy, and nothing. I don't know why. I don't know why people don't click with these two. I think DC is the better fighter. I think Stipe has all of the intangibles somebody would want in a UFC champion and a champion at all. This is a tough one to call. Stipe is the underdog in this fight. I think a lot of people underestimate how good he is. I think people underestimate how good he is just because how great DC is as a fighter in both weight classes. But I'm going to go with the champ defending his gold. I think Stipe wins this fight. I think he just has DC figured out. And I think he cements himself as the greatest heavyweight of all time. And I think DC goes to the sunset and becomes one of the greatest analysts of all time, play-by-play guys of all time. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. And then Stipe will have Francis again and Bones, and we'll see what's next for him. But I think Stipe wins this fight and defends the heavyweight championship. But in the co-main event, you have Sean O'Malley, who has really connected with the crowd against Marlon Vera. This is all I'm going to say. It's the chance of a lifetime for both of these guys. Sean O'Malley wins. Rocket ship, we're going to Sizzler, baby. If Marlon Vera wins, young dude, kind of a badass, he could take Sean O'Malley there and make a name for himself, and he starts getting a couple fights. He puts his name in the mix, especially at a fun division like bantamweight. But I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley in this fight. He's a really big favorite. I think I love the potential of Marlon Vera as a money bet, especially as a dog. But I think Sean, it just feels like it. It feels like, all right, yeah, this is the guy. This is the fight, and soon he's going to be going for the heavyweight championship if he wins this one. So I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley in this one. He has just figured it out too, though. He has figured out what it is for the 20-something-year-olds, and people are excited to watch him fight. And he backs it up. So if he wins this fight, it's the rocket ship, man. Mount Everest is the limit for that kid. So I'll go with Sean O'Malley on that one. A really fun fight, Junior Dos Santos versus Rosenstruck. I think JDS, one of the more underrated heavyweights of all time. Rosenstruck, he's been a beast, and it wasn't until he got knocked out by Francis in like 15 seconds. But the interesting thing about it is, I believe Luke Thomas brought it up. If you've really watched his last few fights, it's hard for us to define what kind of fighter he is, because there's been so many weird circumstances in each of his fights, except for the Francis one. So I'm going to go with what's proven, and that's Junior Dos Santos. Because I think he's just kind of figured out the body weights at his age and what he can and can't do. And you're one mistake away with JDS from getting knocked out. So I'll go JDS in this fight. We have Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. I'm going to go Herbert Burns. Again, somebody who, if he wins this one, it's on to Sizzler. The Burns brothers are absolutely killers. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that one plays out. John Dodson versus Mirab Davashil. I'm going to go John Dodson in this one. He's a little bit older. I think he has more crack in his gloves. You know, like those fists could just really end that fight. You know, what's interesting about Mirab is he's going to take Dodson down. It's one of the things he's known for, you know? But it's what you do when you're down there, especially with somebody like John Dodson in bantamweights. So I'm going to go with John Dodson in that fight. So that's it. At UFC 252, I'm going with John Dodson over Merab Davashil. I'm going to go with Herbert Burns over Daniel Pineda. I'm going to go with Junior Dos Santos over Rosenstruck. I have Sean O'Malley beating Marlon Vera. And in the heavyweight main event of UFC 252, Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier, I got Stipe Miocic defending his UFC championship successfully and cementing himself as the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. But let me know your picks over on Twitter at Mike M Media and on Couch Sports Talk. We're also on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media.